Muslims around the world are suffering. From China to Kashmir to Syria and Lebanon, and in many other countries.
Even in America, Muslim students struggle to find good schools that are strong in the Islamic knowledge. Help the Association of Islamic Charitable Projects support and strengthen our Muslim communities. Donate generously this Ramadan for the benefit of your Muslim brothers and sisters. Visit gofundme.com/AICP fund.
بالخير هيا بنا نلقاه في يومنا يا سادتي يا كرام سيروا لنيل المنى بالخير هيا بنا نلقاه في يومنا يا سادتي يا كرام سيروا لنيل المنى سيروا لنيل المنى.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين. We start with the name of Allah. We praise and thank Allah for all of the endowments He bestowed, without Allah, the Exalted, being obligated to give anything. And we ask Allah to raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, and to protect the nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam from what he feared for it. Thereafter, previously, we spoke about the integrals of the two speeches, which are alhamd for Allah, sending the salah upon the Prophet, and ordering with God-fearingness in both of the two speeches, and for one to recite a verse that is complete, a whole verse, an entire verse that has a sought meaning, not a verse that only gives not a complete meaning, and that they will recite that verse in either of the two speeches, although it's better to recite it in the first, and that one would make supplication, dua, for the Muslims, and that must be done in the second speech. We also talked about the conditions for the two speeches, among them being clear of the two states of ritual impurity and from the najis filth in one's clothing, place of prayer, what one carries, and one's body, and that one would cover their unlawful nakedness by concealing the color of their hair and skin of what's between the navel and the knees from every direction except underneath, and that one would stand for the two speeches if able and sit between the two speeches and have succession in the integrals of the two speeches and between the two speeches and the prayer and other valuable matters that we reviewed in the last session. God willing, in this final session for the month of Ramadan, we will talk about some of the matters that pertain to following the Imam. And it's numerous what the Sheikh talked about, and he gave some detail. He went into a certain amount of detail. So I doubt that we will complete them all, but we will complete whatever we're able to in the allotted amount of time. the author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said that everyone who follows an imam while performing the prayer of Jumu'ah or other prayers must fulfill the following obligations. And there are certain things that a person must observe and adhere to for the validity of one's prayer if they intend to follow someone else, to follow an imam. He said, the follower must not be ahead of one's imam in the standing position or the opening Allahu Akbar statement. The prayer of the follower is invalid if one says one's opening Allahu Akbar during that of the imam. Simultaneity with the imam in other parts of the prayer is disliked, that is, in other parts, not this part, the opening takbirah, is disliked, he said, with the exception of saying Ameen. So for the follower to say Ameen for the completion of the recitation of Al-Fatiha of the Imam, saying that with the Imam at the same time, this is something that is actually recommended. Explaining that, he said it is obligatory upon whoever wanted to follow another in the prayer, whether the Friday prayer or other prayers, to observe the conditions of following the Imam that he wants to follow. These conditions are 6. He said that one does not know of the invalidity of the prayer of the Imam. So if the follower knew that the Imam's prayer is invalid, then he does not follow that Imam. He said whether that was due to ritual impurity or other matters, like if the follower knew that the Imam was not on wudu, or like knowing of unexempted najis filth on the clothes of the Imam. Then, if one, in spite of that knowledge, followed him, his prayer would be invalid in this case. Then he said, number 2 of 6, to not believe that the prayer of the Imam is invalid. That is, sometimes a person would have a dhann that the prayer of the Imam is not valid. That is, he would believe without having definitive knowledge that the prayer of the Imam is not valid. He said, thus, had 2 individuals made a determination for the prayer direction, but their conclusions differed. That is, they did not agree on exactly what the prayer direction was. So one of the 2 people, they faced one direction, and the other did not face the same exact direction. Then it is not permissible for one of them to follow the other. This is because, from the perspective of one, the other is not praying the right direction, and from the perspective of the other, the first is not praying the right direction. Yani because they both made a determination to find the prayer direction and they differed. However, this making a determination for the Qibla, it is not definitive knowledge. Yani they are exerting effort to find the prayer direction based on the rules of the religion, and they're doing the best that they can at that. And even if one of them was slightly off in reality, then their prayer would be valid. But since the 2 of them did not agree upon the prayer direction, then one of them is not allowed to follow the other, because according to the deduction and the dhann of one of them, the prayer of the other one would not be valid. Number 3 is to not believe that repeating the prayer is obligatory upon the Imam. Sometimes there is a situation where a person is obligated to pray in the circumstance or in the situation that he finds himself in for a specific reason, like for what they call hurmatul waqt, which is that the person would perform something during the prayer time, but still be obligated to repeat the prayer again later once that circumstance that he was in is lifted. Sometimes, for example, the scholars would say if a person, sometimes a person, for example, would not be able to make a determination for the qibla, for example, so then he would pray in whatever circumstance he was in, and then he would, when he's able to make a determination, he would repeat that prayer, for example. So, among the conditions for following the imam is not to believe that the imam's prayer must be repeated, that the imam will be obligated to re-perform that prayer. He said, like the one who performed tayammum, dry purification, due to lack of water, not due to illness, and he did that in an area where water is usually available. So in this circumstance, the person would make up this prayer when they find water, for example. So then, in this case, if the imam was in that circumstance, then the follower would not follow him. He said it is not permissible to follow one who is in this case because it is a must for this one, yani the one who we're calling the imam in this case, to repeat their prayer. A similar case is the one who put a cast on the limb of tayammum. He said number 4 is not to doubt if the imam is following or leading. Yeah, this is a circumstance where if the follower, if the person who wants to follow came upon two people who were praying together, but he was unsure which one was the imam and which one was the follower, then it's not permissible for him to follow either one of them. This could happen, for example, if two people were praying together, but they were praying side by side instead of the follower standing somewhat behind the imam, even by a little bit. And so because of this, it was unclear which of them was the imam and which one was the follower. He said, following whoever one doubts about if he is the imam or not is prohibited. Yani, is he the imam or the follower? Then it is not permissible to follow him. He said, more so, following whoever one knows is a follower is prohibited. Yani, so this means to follow someone who one knows is a follower while he is still actively following. Not the circumstance where the person was following an imam. However, he was considered late to the prayer, for example, so he did not pray with the imam all of the rak'ah that the imam prayed. And then after the imam completes his prayer, he stands up to complete his own prayer. In this case, following this person would not be prohibited. It would be valid. It would be valid in this case. This reminds me of a certain circumstance that happened in the past that shows the importance of a person being very precise in their question. And for it to be very important that the person giving the judgment is understanding what is being asked. Otherwise, it could lead to confusion, lack of clarity. On a certain occasion, I asked a person, is it permissible for a person to follow the follower? He said, yes. Then, in another situation, I asked a person, is it permissible for a person to follow a follower? He said, no. So then, it crossed my mind, these two people are giving two contradictory judgments about the same case. Then, later, I learned that this exact judgment, that if a person was following an imam and he was still actively following that imam, they were both still involved in the prayer, that it's prohibited to follow the follower, to intend to make this one who is a follower of another imam your imam. So that is prohibited. So that was apparently the understanding of one of those who I asked the question to. He understood that I was asking, is it permissible to follow a person who is actively following an imam? He said no to the answer to the question. Then, additionally, we learned that, however, if a person had been a follower, he was following an imam, but that imam, he had completed his prayer, and so this person who was once the follower now stands up to complete whatever raka'at, whatever cycles of the prayer that he did not reach and pray with the imam. Then, if one followed this person, his prayer would be valid. And so apparently that was the understanding of the other person who I asked the question to. And so, because I asked the question in a way without going into more detail or clarity of exactly what I was talking about, one of them understood from my question one case, and one understood from my question another case. And so they gave two different judgments, but they were actually both the appropriate judgment for the case that they understood that I was asking. However, in my mind, I didn't understand their understanding. I didn't grasp what they were comprehending. And so, in my mind, I thought that there was a mistake, that someone was saying something contradictory to the saying of the other. And that didn't become clear to me until then. So, these types of things can occur if a person doesn't ask his question in a clear and precise way. He said, this is the case if one followed him before the completion of the imam's prayer. However, after the end of the prayer of the imam, following the one who was late, yani who was a late follower of him, of the imam, is valid. But if his situation was known, it is disliked. Meaning that if one knew that this person they want to follow had been following another imam, then it's better for him not to follow him. He said, thus, had one seen two people praying and doubted which one of them was the imam, following one of them would not be valid even if he made a determination to choose who to follow. It's because the doubt persisted in his mind who was the imam and who was the follower. So in this case, it is prohibited for him to follow either one of them. Then he said, among the conditions or among the matters that must be adhered to for the validity of following the imam is that the imam would not be one who does not recite the Fatiha properly, like being unable to utter a letter among the letters of the Fatiha, or being unable to pronounce them from their proper exits. This is something prohibited. A person would, that is, to follow someone in this case is something that one would avoid. He said, number 6, for the man not to follow the woman or the hermaphrodite whose gender was unknown. The hermaphrodite is the person who was born with both genitalia, the genitalia of the male and the female. This is not a third gender. This person would not be considered neither or both. Rather, in reality, they're either male or female. But there are some cases where there would be a period of time where it is unknown exactly which of the two genders the person is. So this person, which is called the mushkil, all right, this person, it is not permissible for the man to follow behind him because of the possibility that this person is actually a female. So the man can follow behind a man, but not follow behind a woman or the hermaphrodite whose gender was unknown. Then the Sheikh said, alert, it is permissible, that is tanbih, it is permissible for a woman to follow a man, and it is permissible for a woman to follow a hermaphrodite, or another woman. If the woman followed the hermaphrodite whose gender was unknown, then they're either following a man or a woman, and both of those are permissible for a woman to follow. So the woman, she can follow a man, a hermaphrodite, or another woman in the prayer. He said, as for the hermaphrodite whose gender was unknown, they may follow a man, not a woman, because it's possible that their gender is male. So then if they followed a woman, that would be invalid. So they would not follow a woman. Rather, they would follow men only. He said, as for the saying of the author, the follower must not go ahead of one's imam in the standing position or the saying of the opening Allahu Akbar. That is, the prayer of the follower is invalid if one says one's opening Allahu Akbar doing that of the imam. As we've already mentioned, one starts the prayer by having the intention in one's heart, saying Allahu Akbar while standing. Yani these are the first three integrals, and there is some simultaneity between them. One would be standing at the same time that they make the intention and they say the opening Allahu Akbar. He said simultaneity with the imam in other parts of the prayer is disliked. So, if the imam said Allahu Akbar, then the follower would not begin saying Allahu Akbar until the imam has completed the ra and akbar of his own takbirah. So the follower does not begin saying Allahu Akbar until the imam has completely finished saying Allahu Akbar. If the follower said Allahu Akbar at the same exact time as the imam, so he started when the imam started, his prayer would not be valid. Likewise, if the opening saying of Allahu Akbar of the follower overlapped any part of the takbirah of the imam. So if the follower started saying Allahu Akbar after the imam finished the ha from Allah and did not complete Akbar, or if he started the hamza of Akbar and didn't get to the cat, or he got to the cat and didn't get to the ba, or he got to the ba and didn't get to the ra, or he started the ra but he didn't complete the ra. In any of those cases, if the follower started his takbirah, then his prayer would not be valid, his following would not be valid, his prayer would not commence. Rather, the follower must wait until the imam finishes the akbar, the ra in akbar, in the saying of Allahu Akbar, before even beginning his utterance of the takbirah, of the saying of Allahu Akbar. As for other parts of the prayer, like bowing, standing up, prostrating, going down to the sujood position, sitting between the two prostrations, standing up to begin another cycle of the prayer after the completion of one rak'ah. In these cases, for the follower to perform them at the same exact time as the imam does not invalidate the prayer. However, it is disliked. He said, with the exception of saying Ameen, because this is something that is actually recommended. The scholars mentioned this, that the Prophet ﷺ informed that when the imam says Ameen, the angels say Ameen, and the person among the followers whose Ameen, whose saying of Ameen, is simultaneous with the Ameen of the angels, then he would have sins forgiven. So it is good, it is desirable for one to say Ameen with the Ameen of the imam upon the completion of the imam's recitation of the Fatiha. Then he said, mentioning back to the sayings of the author about going ahead of the imam in the standing position and in the ihram, that it's something that this is something prohibited He mentioned that the first among them is not to go ahead of the imam in the standing position. So this is something prohibited. If one was intending to follow another person in the prayer, he does not stand in front of the imam. What is the consideration for standing in front of the imam? How would one know that one was standing in front of the imam or right to his side or actually behind him? He said the consideration is the heel. So in the standing position, the consideration is the heel, the back part of the foot. So the heel of the follower would not go ahead of the heel of the imam. So here we're not talking about the toes, the toes of the feet, because it's possible that, for example, the imam would have small feet and the follower would have very large feet. And even though the follower's heel was behind the heel of the imam, his toes may reach and go ahead of the toes of the imam. But still, as long as his heel was behind the heels of the imam, then this would not invalidate his following. This would not invalidate his prayer. In the sitting position, the consideration for being ahead of the imam or not is the buttocks. So the buttocks of the follower in the sitting position should not go ahead of the buttocks of the imam. He said, thus, if he went ahead of the heel of the imam with his heel, his prayer is not valid. He said the second is succeeding in the opening Allahu Akbar. It is obligatory not to go ahead of the imam in the opening saying of Allahu Akbar. In fact, simultaneity, that is, being at the same time with the imam in the takbirah, that is, the opening saying of Allahu Akbar, invalidates the prayer, whether it was certain or even doubted. That is, if the person even doubted that his takbirah was simultaneous with the takbirah of the imam, then likewise his prayer would be invalid. He said, delaying the complete takbir of the follower until the completion of the complete takbir of the imam is obligatory. As for simultaneity and other than that, among the movements of the prayer, it is disliked, meaning that it's better to avoid it. However, it does not invalidate. Furthermore, by that is by simultaneity in the different positions, in the different movements, for one to, for example, bow exactly as the imam bows, and to stand exactly as the imam stands, not to wait for the imam to bow and catch up with him, then to wait for him and then stand up. That's not simultaneity. But to bow with him as he bows, this would cause one to miss the reward of praying in congregation. So this is very important for a person to know about, because why are they even praying in congregation if not for the reward? They want the reward for this deed. So it's important for one to know that simultaneity in those moves is not recommended. Rather, he allows the imam to go to the position, then he goes and catches the imam in the position. We're not saying that he wants to delay behind the imam by like a whole integral or anything like that, or be many moves behind the imam, no, but that he would allow the imam to go to the next position before he himself went to that position. He said the exception to this among the mentioned matters is saying Ameen. Simultaneity is superior by not preceding or succeeding it. That is, he would say the Ameen starting with the imam and not going after. He wouldn't start before the imam, and nor would he delay until after the imam began. And with that, we've talked about some of the matters, the conditions for following the imam, and this is the amount of time that we have for this session. And God willing, we'll be able to continue these valuable sessions in the future at some later time. And inshallah, we'll meet again in the coming Ramadan. That is, of course, if Allah the Exalted will for us to do so. May Allah the Exalted give us a long life in obedience to Him. May Allah the Exalted make us among those who acquires the obligatory knowledge, implements it masters it, implements it, and teaches it to others. For surely that is the cause for a great reward. And I'll mention for you that the person who fulfills these matters, who learns this summary book, then they will have acquired the obligatory knowledge of the religion, or most of the obligatory knowledge of the religion. If they were a person who involved themselves in matters not mentioned in the summary, then of course they would be obligated to acquire the religious judgments pertaining to that, like some types of dealings that were not mentioned in the summary or other matters. And our sheikhs mentioned that the person who fulfills all of the obligations and avoids all of the sins, that this is a pious person. And if a person can maintain that status for a period of time, then inshallah, Allah the Exalted would inspire them to do additional acts of worship. And the person whose heart was not attached to the dunya, and the person who fulfilled the obligations and avoided all of the sins, and he did additional acts of worship, if he could stay in that circumstance, in that situation for long enough, then his rank would be raised and raised and raised until he became a highly pious Muslim, a Muslim of the state of high piety. And what we mean by that is that he would enter into the state of wilaya, this specific type of wilaya, which means that he would become among those who لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون, that he would be among those who on Judgment Day would not be sad, they would not be sad, and they would have nothing to fear. So the person who reaches this status, inshallah, they would be protected from blasphemy. And isn't that the best that we would hope for, among the best things that we would hope for? May Allah the Exalted, even with our own weakness, may Allah the Exalted make us reach this state, make us reach this status. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. جزا الله محمدا عنا خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Muslims around the world are suffering. From China to Kashmir to Syria and Lebanon, and in many other countries.
Even in America, Muslim students struggle to find good schools that are strong in the Islamic knowledge. Help the Association of Islamic Charitable Projects support and strengthen our Muslim communities. Donate generously this Ramadan for the benefit of your Muslim brothers and sisters. Visit gofundme.com/AICP fund.